of the beauty in Judaism is they strongly believe that nothing happened by coincidence and there is always measure for measure. We believe that the divine providence involved not only as a transcendental God but also a living God that take in account every single action and it's all accumulate and paid in full for good or not. So the center subject of today is measure for measure, in a positive way, in a negative way. We are in Tractate Sotah. We're going to study page 9. We'll start on page 8b, 6 lines from the bottom of the page. Tanya haya Rabbi Omer. So the two options, either was Rabbi Meir or Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. He said, Minayin shebemidah she'adam moded ba'modedim lo. How do you know that in the interaction between man and God, or heavenly tribunal and people, how do you know that it goes both ways? That in our language is like God in search of man and man in search of God, that it's always a two-way street. Prove it. So he brings a beautiful source that the prophet Isaiah, who lived about 200 years before the destruction of the first temple, said, Shene'emar, in Isaiah 27, Besa'asea beshalcha terivena. Besa'asea, in full measure, meaning in the measure besa'asea that one used in one sin, God will punish him or her. So sa'asea, you hear something that's like a repetition of two words. So Rabbeinu David Kimchi and the Malbim explains, using just as an example based on other commentaries as well. If you look at the eye of a person, the Gemara tells us in Nida that there are three partners in human creation: Father, Mother, and the Almighty. The way that the Almighty planted the eye of a person, there are two components. There is the internal part, it's called in Ivrit the Ishon, and the external part. But the internal part is the one who measure and see the deepest, the small, infinitesimal part. The external see just the larger picture. If you analyze human eye, in that sense, the rabbi said, that's the idea of besa'asea. There is a approach to understanding God in the broader way, and there is understanding God in the smallest tiny way that involved with a living God in our dining room, in every little thing that God understands and sees. Some example. The rabbi tells us we are now in the book of Genesis, so this is a well-known story. Some early rabbis, the Kadmonim, said, look at the story of our forefather Jacob. So he brought to his father Isaac the Gdi, the little goat, and he said that I'm Esav, right? Later on, his son Joseph was basically, they took a goat, they combined his tunic with blood, and the same way, 22 years, Jacob was forced out of his parents because of that hatred. 22 years, he didn't see his son Joseph. So it's hard for us to fully comprehend that concept of measure for measure, but the point is God see every single action, including the small miniature things that you don't even think about, and therefore there is a clear measure of reward and punishment in the small scale and the big scale. So he said, Ainli ela se'ah. Since we analyze the word se'ah, which is a measure word, there is Gemara in Tractate Bava Batra, page 90, they're dealing with different measurement. So they said, Minayin lerabot, how do you know that tirkav, v'chatzi tirkav, kav, v'chatzi kav, rova, v'chatzi rova, tomen ve'ukla, it's all small, tiny, miniature measurement. So they said, Talmud Lomar is another pasuk in Yeshayahu, chapter 9, Ki chol se'on so'en bera'ash. So again, there is a way to win the war by a big commotion, the way that is a quiet winning. So the Meiri explaining every single action is a measure for measure. Sin, good deeds, and the same as we explained yesterday, that the 4 heavenly punishment, that is a capital punishment, even we no longer have the Bet Din of 23 judges, we do not have any longer the temple at this point, still the application of those, God forbid, death, is still applicable. God forbid shall never happen, but you see, people get killed, people get stoned, people get, it's all these things that God take care of things in a way that we not always merited. One of the privilege, the kindness of God, is that sometimes we understand, but how many times in life we do not understand right away, maybe in the future, maybe toward the future generation. There is a lot of things like Holocaust. I'm one of those rabbis that said, I don't know why it happens, but I do know that there is God and it's for a reason, right? So here we said, ומניין שכל פרוטה ופרוטה מצטרפת לחשבון גדול. Here they use the allegory of money. How do you know that every single coin, every single small money, the nickels, the dimes, you collected them eventually, you have altogether payment? Why? So Rashi explains, he said, you know what happened? Many times you get away with murder, you get away with something that's very bad, things you did, and you feel, okay, God let it go, it's over, and vice versa. But the truth is, it's not like that. Some rabbis said it's like a credit card. You know, there is limitations. But here they said that is eventually the collection, meaning when you reach a point, soon you see that it's cross borders, then all of a sudden God's come in and do what needs to be done. So it's a very deep concept in Judaism, Talmud Lomar, and soon you see why we have all discussion, because we're leading to Sotah. Talmud Lomar, they said in the book of Kohelet, King Solomon said in Ecclesiastic chapter 7, Achat le'achat limtzo cheshbon, to find, adding one thing to another to find out an account. So limtzo, the Midrash said, Etz Yosef said that there's nothing left. Unlike us, God look at the smallest minute things that happen and take care of that. So here is a story for you. Since we're close to Shabbos, you can tell that to your family. It's a beautiful Litvische story. So the story goes, it was a city of Vilna, of Vilnius in Lithuania. It was a city of learning, a city of a lot of Torah, for sure before the war. So the Vilna Gaon, the great Rabbi Eliyahu of Vilna, was the luminary rabbi, and his wife, the Rebbetzin, was not only a righteous woman, she was also the head of the Tzedakah fund. She used to go out and collected from different ladies money for different people in needs and etc. So she have another lady that they are together for years and years on Friday, used to go and collect money for poor people to leave outside of the doors food for Shabbat. So one time the Rebbetzin and that lady, and that is written in the Vilna diary book. In those years, in each kehila, in each community, they have a big book that the Gaboim, the Shamosim in a community used to write down particular special events that happened in the community. So it's written in the Vilnius diary, this story, and it's recorded in many, many books. So the story goes that the Rebbetzin and the other lady made an agreement. It's called Kiat Kaf. It's like handshaking agreement, that whoever passed first will come the other one in a dream or in some way and tell the other what's going on there. They just friendly agreement that they used to joke around for years after years. And one time the other righteous lady passed away, and the Rebbetzin said that Friday night she had a dream and she saw her friends coming back, and she said to the Rebbetzin, I am not allowed to tell you what's going on, and I'm very sorry, but we have a handshake, but they not let me. But since we have a handshake agreement, I'll tell you one thing, that's the only thing I allow to tell you, that every single thing that we did in collecting money, in collecting tzedakah, we split as we agreed, half of the mitzvah for me, half of the mitzvah for you. But here is the point. One time, do you remember, years back, we're walking on the street on Friday, we need to collect fund, and we are thinking, how should we collect it? And you raise your hand and you said, you see that lady across the street? We should approach her and ask her. And we crossed the street and we went to that lady and she gave us money. So she said to her, here's the deal. We split that mitzvah, but you're going to get way more for me because you lift up your hand and pointed at her. And she disappeared. So it means to us that even in the smallest measure, that the Rebbetzin just lift up her hands and appointed to someone as a potential donor, just for doing so, she's already get a reward for that. That's what they told the other lady to tell her. וכן מצינו בסוטה. So now we go in a negative way, and it's painful because we're now going to a surgery dealing with Sotah, the woman that was unfaithful. So the Torah described the punishment. So they said שבמידה שבמדדה בה מדדו לה, which means the same way that she did, the heavenly tribunal paid her. היא עמדה על פתח ביתה לראות לו. She was standing at the front of her house in order to seduce the adulterer. לפיכך כהן מעמידה על שער ניקיון. So therefore the Kohen, who's, as we explained yesterday, fall in the lottery to do this ritual of purification, he stand at the gate of Nicanor in the eastern part of the temple, ומראה קלונה לכל. So he, as the Torah said, he stand there and at the entrance and make her in a way shame. היא פרסה לו סודרים נעין על ראשה. She put a shawl on her head for him, for the idolater. So לפיכך כהן נוטל כיפה מעל ראשה ומניחה תחת רגליה. So therefore the Kohen is commanded to take the veil from her above her hair and place it on her feet, which again is an act of embarrassment. היא קישתה לו פניה, she adored her face for him, לפיכך, and therefore, 9, פניה מוריקות, the face become sallow. So the Rashi said that it was already there before. היא כחלה לו עיניה, she made her eyes for him, לפיכך כהן סותר את שערה, same way. היא הראתה לו באצבע, לפיכך ציפורניה נושרות. Showing her finger, so there's a nail. היא חגרה לו בצלצול, she girded herself for him with the belt, לפיכך כהן מביא חבל המצרי וקושר לה למעלה מדדיה. That's what we said yesterday, the special robe that was placed. היא פשטה לו את ירחה, she brought the thigh for him, לפיכך ירחה נופלת. The same way. היא קיבלתו על קריסה, לפיכך בתנצבה. היא אכלתה ומדעני עולם, she gave him all this food, לפיכך קורבנה מאכל בהמה. So therefore the offering, we explained, if you remember yesterday, that it's the kemach seorim, which is the offering, the barley that you give to animals. היא השקטה יין משובח בכוסות משובחים, she offered him expensive wine, from old wine, לפיכך כהן משקה מים המרים במקידה של חרס. So therefore the Kohen give her the bitter water to drink in the earthenware fire pot. So that's the Gemara in Zvachim, page 20, said that that's the cheapest pot. He עשתה בסתר, that's painful. She did it in a secret way. יושב בסתר עליון, that's Psalm 91. The God Almighty, who was in our understanding, sit in seclusion on high, שם בפנים. Find a time to take care of that. That is public. שנאמר, they said, ואין נואף שמרה נפש, לאמור לא תשועני עין. Meaning, in simple way, sometimes people think that God don't see that because it's in secret. As you know, we spend many times the difference between punishment of a thief and punishment of a robber. Robber needs to pay back what he took. Thief needs to pay double. Robber is not afraid neither people nor God. Thief thinks that God is not there. He's only come at night because he thinks that people don't see him. So therefore we impose on a thief double punishment. So they said here, דבר אחר, היא עשתה בסתר, she acted in seclusion, המקום פרסמה בגלוי, the omnipresent publicized it openly. שנאמר, they said in the book of Proverbs, chapter 26, תכסה שנאה במסעון, תגלה רעתו בקהל. One who covers something hated by God, by darkness will have his evil revealed in a congregation. So, meaning that eventually it appears. So it was a great, what? It was a great, become public. So the truth is a Maggid of Chernobyl was a great rabbi in the late 18th century. So the story goes that he said, if you look at the word chet, there are certain words also in English language that you don't pronounce, certain letters in the word. You don't say Home Depot, you don't say Naigd, right? There are certain letters in words that you don't pronounce. So in the Hebrew, the word chet, meaning sin, is chet, tet, and aleph. Right. Now if you look at the Talmud, we do not have page 1, because 1 is only Hashem. Hashem is the one. So he said that's the idea of aleph. Yoshev beseter elyon, the omnipresent who's sitting in those hidden place in seclusion, in the aleph is the chet. Meaning when someone committed a sin, he or she think that the aleph is not seeing it because you do not pronounce it. When you say the word chet, you can spell it with chet and tet without the aleph. So the aleph in a way is a hidden. Some people cheating themselves, like Adam at the very beginning of Genesis.
Aleph and Bereshit.
Yeah, that like it's a hidden. They think that Hashem is not seeing these things. So, מאחר דנפקה לי אחת לאחת למצוא חשבון. Since the brighter derives an adding, and they said to find the amount, ככל שאון שאון ברעש למה לי? Why you need the pasuk? So they said לחמידה, meaning is measure for measure. ומאחר דנפקה לי מכל שאון שאון שואן ברעש, בסעשעה בשלך תריבנה למה לי? Why you need? לכדי רב חיננה בר פפא, דאמר רב חיננה בר פפא, אין הקדוש ברוך הוא נפרע מן האומה עד שעת שילוחה. Meaning the Almighty will not pay to the evil nation, not punish that nation, until they reach a point that they are completely reach, like Sodom and Gomorrah, they reach a point that it's no longer possibility there for teshuva. שנאמר בסעשעה בשלך. Remember we said that when Abraham begged for Sodom and Gomorrah, maybe the Armenian, maybe the 10 righteous people, this destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah was not because they are so bad, it was because it wasn't a minion there. It wasn't the 10 people that saved the city. So the Gemara said, "Ve'eni, is that correct? Ve'amar Rava, shalosh kosot amrot b'Mitzrayim." If you examine the relationship between Joseph as a prisoner and the minister, the Egyptian minister that spent time with him in jail, so the Sarah Mashkim, the minister of Chernobyl, he said to him that I saw, he used the word kos, meaning cup, of Pharaoh. I saw it and used that word several times. So some say that that's a reflection of what we're doing on the Pesach, the kosot, the arba kosot. But anyway, here they said the three, achat sheshatat bimei Moshe. One is drank the drinking the day of Moses, meaning it was the Egyptians were punished during the Exodus when the Jewish people left Egypt. The second one, ואחת ששתת בימי פרעה נכו, it was the king Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, that destroyed Egypt. That's what Jeremiah said in advance on chapter 46 in Jeremiah. And the 3:1, ואחת, אחת imply to the cup שעתידה לשתות עם חברותיה, which is that one a future with its fellow, which is the messianic era, that it means that Egypt will not totally annihilated at the first punishment. וכי תימא הנח אזדו, meaning the ancient original Egyptians disappear because there is a story in the Torah how they chased them, they reached the sea, and then they drowned, and then God took care, the Vilna Gaon said, of those people in Egypt themselves. והנה אחרין עלינו, and this is a different Egyptians. והתניא אמר רב יהודה מנימין גר המצרי, היה לי חבר מתלמידי רבי עקיבא, it's a name of someone who's a fellow, time of the student of Rabbi Akiva. אמר מנימין גר המצרי, אני מצרי ראשון. I am the original first generation converted Egyptian convert. ונשאתי מצרית ראשונה, and I married another first generation Egyptian convert. עשי לבני מצרית שנייה, so I'll marry off my son who is a second generation Egyptian convert, כדי שיהיה בן בני, in order to have my grandson, which is the third generation Egyptian, מותר לבוא בקהל, permitted to enter into the congregation. The Torah said in Deuteronomy 23 that they not allowed to, the Egyptian, not allowed to enter our congregation for the 3 generation. And the Torah explained the reason. It's mainly for certain...
so why is the purpose they converting if they can't...
because eventually they allow, the 3rd generation allow, which means the original Egyptian will not total annihilated, and even those Egyptians that live at the time of the early Mishnaic rabbis, Tanaim, they considering the descendants of the original Egyptians that were prohibited by Torah to enter the congregation. The Yalkut, one of the Midrashic explanation of the Torah reading in this week's parasha, it's about the story of Sarah have the child, the Isaac, and Rashi brought the story in the Midrash that people basically have a hard to believe that a lady in her age bear a child, and Rashi said that God make Isaac's face exactly the same as Abraham, so no one will think that it's from any other source. So this is one of the fascinating great gift of God, that you see a reflection of the parents to the children. But it was a case once in the Maharsham. Maharsham was a great Hasidic posek rabbi. It was a couple that have no children for many, many years. She reached a bridge age that almost cannot have children. But it was a relative of the husband that moved there and lived there. And then she conceived and she had a baby boy, and people said that the baby boy looked exactly like the guy who lived with them. So the Maharsham explained that there's nothing to worry. The Gemara tells us about Rabbi Yochanan and others that while the woman is pregnant, the images she watch, the way she sees things have a psyche, have a different impact in her subconscious. Anyway, אלא יתמר אחי יתמר. אמר רב חיננה בר פפא, אין הקדוש ברוך הוא נפרע מן המלך עד שעת שילוחו, שנאמר בסעשעה בשלחה תריבנה. המימר מתנלה דרב חיננה בר פפא, מהי דכתיב? What the prophet מלאכי in chapter 3 meant to say, כי אני השם לא שניתי, ואתם בני יעקב לא חליתם, that I, God, am not changed, and you, the sons of Yaakov, you have not perished. So it means, היינו דכתיב חיצה יחלה בם, חיצה יקלין ואין אינם קלין. Meaning, it's like the arrow, the punishment, but in a sense, we will survive. And the truth is, the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, almost 300 years ago, he lived at a time that Polish government was totally in charge and control. And he said the same way as the ancient Babylon and ancient Egypt and ancient Spanish government high-rise and disappear, he said that the Polish, that's what happened to them as much as they torture our people. The same happened with another Hasidic rabbi, Rab Mordechai Minashchiz, who was a great Hasidic rabbi. He predicted that the big communist Russia will disappear, will fall apart. And you look today if that is true or not. So that's the reality. That as much as temporarily you see that we suffer and torture and persecuted, eventually God will take care of that. Amar Rav Nuna and HaKadosh Baruch Hu nifra min ha'adam ad shetitmale se'ato. The same individual, that God will not punish a person until his measure is filled. Shenemar, they said in the book of Job chapter 20, bimlot sifko yeitzer lo. They said in the fullness of his sufficiency he should be straight. So the great Sephardic rabbi, the Ben Ish Chai, said that there is a allegory of a king, the king of a son that was a rebellious son, did not behave properly. And after one of those crimes that the son committed, it was a decision to stone him. So the king came to the court and he said, all right, I understand that you need to stone him, but I want you to basically grind the stone. So what happened is, each and every time you throw some of the stones on him, so he remembered the sin he committed, but he will survive. So the Ben Ish Chai said that's what happened to us. Our ancestors did the mistakes as well as us, so God sometimes give us something. Doesn't mean that that's going to be forever, and we believe that things will straighten down and be better soon. דרש רבי חנינא בר פפא, מאי דכתיב רננו צדיקים בהשם לישרים נאוות הילה. What King David meant when he said in Psalm 33 that the righteous should be joyfully joyfully because of God, for the upright praise is fitting. He said, Al tikri nava tehila ela neve tehila, which is זה משה ודוד שלא שלטו שונאיהם במעשיהם. That applies as example of biblical Moses and David, that the enemies did not gain control of the handiwork, meaning it's always balance between bad and good and evil and good, and as much as the enemies try to denigrate them and control them, their righteous good deed supersede the enemy's plan. My late grandmother, Rebbetzin Brandwine, I remember her as a child. I'm back 40 plus years ago. So one time she had an Arab contractor that did renovation and building in that neighborhood in the old city of Jerusalem. So she innocently praised him and she says, "You building so beautiful." So he said to her, all of this is going to be ours. We're just building for ourselves. All this state of Israel, we're building for ourselves, because soon it will turn around for us. And Grandma said to me, in Hebrew, she said, he is wrong for simple reason. If we do teshuvah and we do the way Hashem expecting us to behave, it's going just the opposite the way he think, that he's going to work for us to build our homes. If we behave the way Hashem do not expect us to behave, he maybe will be the winner. David dichtiv tav'u va'aretz she'area. King David said, its gate sunk in the earth. Moshe, they said about Moses, the Amar Mar mishnivna mikdash rishon. He said when the first temple was built, nignaz ol moed, the tent of meeting was hidden, meaning those folder of the tabernacle was concealed. Krashav, krasav, uvrichav, amudav, adanav, all these pieces, the beam, the hooks, the bars, the pillars, all these sockets, all of that concealed. Heicha, where is it? Where is the tabernacle hidden? Amar Rab Chizda, Amar Rab Yomi, tachat mechilot shel hechal. He said that's under the tunnel of the temple sanctuary. I do know, I heard it from I think it was Aaron Schmerling, one of the people who visit Jerusalem. I think they said that when they go to the Jerusalem tunnels, I don't know if you guys have a chance, they say that they feel a lot of special spirit, energy, spirituality there, and they see a lot of things that it's hard to describe. So in short, it is a strong belief in ours that these things will reveal to us in those tunnels that many of things we do not know what's going on there. Anyway, Tanu Rabbanan, Sotah natna einea b'mi she'eno ra'ui la. That's a sickness that many people have, that they are looking for the neighbor, how beautiful is their green right lawn, landscape, or the Mercedes, or the beautiful home, or the beautiful wife, or the beautiful husband, or the beautiful job, right? And they basically want thing that it's not there, it's not designated to them. So they said it's double. Sotah natna einea. The Sotah set her eyes upon one who is not fit for her. במי שאינו ראוי לה. מה שביקשה לא ניתן לה. Meaning that now she is prohibited not only to the adulterer, meaning even she will divorce or she become widow, she cannot have this guy in her life anymore, the guy who committed adultery with her. ומה שבידה נתלוע ממנה, meaning if she would die out of drinking the bitter herb, and if she agreed and say that I did it, then she lose her ketubah money and she will be prohibited to her husband. שכל הנוטל עיניו ומה שאינו שלו, if someone set up his eyes for something that is not belong to him, he will be punished. מה שמבקש, what he asks, what he seek, אין נותנים לו, they will not give it to him, but the next step even, or מה שבידו, that the said part, even thing that he is already possessed, נוטלים ממנו, they take it away from him. 9b, וכן מצינו בנחש הקדמוני. We all know the story at the beginning of Genesis, which is the story of the primeval snake who seduced Eve, שנתן עיניו במה שאינו ראוי לו, because he שיעני, is like he tried to marry Eve, the snake, which is a different appearance that the snake we recognize today. God cut off his legs, right? So he wanted to marry Chava, Eve. So מה שביקש לא נתנו לו, they didn't give what he wants. ומה שבידו נטלו ממנו, this appearance of the king of all the animals taken from him, God cut off his leg, as the Torah said. The truth is that Rabbeinu Moshe Cordovero, in the Kabbalistic book called Pardes Rimonim, explains against that notion in some midrashim that he really have physical relation with Chava. The Kabbalistic approach is more allegorical or metaphysical and not a physical relation. אמר הקדוש ברוך הוא, אני אמרתי יהיה נחש, יהיה מלך על כל בהמה וחיה, the snake will be the king of all animal, and ועכשיו, and now after he committed such iniquity, הוא מכל הבהמה ומכל חיית השדה, curse be upon him from all the other animals, even worse than all those field animals. Why? Because according to the understanding of Genesis 3 verse 14, the snake curse of the 7 years period for delivering a baby, meaning from having the opportunity to deliver baby right away to reach a point of 7 years period, meaning also the change makes his belly the centerpiece of his movement. Not just that, אני אמרתי ילך בקומה זקופה. I said that he should go with upright, and now עכשיו על גחונו ילך. Now we go on the belly, shall it go. אני אמרתי המה אכלו מאכל אדם. Originally the goal was to have him eating a human food. Now all of a sudden הוא אמר, עכשיו עפר יאכל. Now is the curse that he eats only dust. So only dust is like he goes to the lowest. Next, הוא אמר אהרוג את אדם ואשא את חווה. He planned to kill the first man Adam and to marry his wife Chava. So he hoped that Chava, after eating from the tree of knowledge, and then what happened is he wants to kill Adam with his venom, but he couldn't kill him before he eats from the tree of knowledge. So he planned that both of them, Adam and Eve, would eat from the tree of knowledge. And then, the Sfarim had explained, then he will put the venom on Adam, he will kill him and have his wife Chava as his wife. Achshav, God punished him in such a way, Eiva Ashit, that God cursed him and said, I create an animosity, a hatred, Beincha uven Isha, between the women, meaning Chava and you, and the snake, uven Zaracha uven Zara, and between you descendants and her descendants. So now the Braita bring another 10 examples of these rules, that someone wants something that does not belong to him or her, and as a result, even what they have was taken from them. V'chen matzinu bekain, in very short, Cain, the brother of Evel. He was born, according to the Midrash, with a twin sister, and Evel was born with a double twin sister. And then they said, Vayeda Kain et ishto, which means that eventually he was killed. They divided the land. Another interpretation, Cain took the property, and then Abel took all the moving properties. And you see what happened is, at the end, after the great event, he was cursed to be always moving from one place to another. He have no settle in his life. Then we said, Korach wanted to be the high priest. It wasn't enough for him to be the wealthier person and part of the Levites. He wanted to be the high priest, and as a result, Rashi said, he will swallow, the earth open its mouth and swallow him. Bilam, the famous story in the Parashat Balak, that Bilam look at the money that Balak made for in the payment that Bilam cursed the Jewish people, but then he come to collect his money for the 24,000 people that die, and he was stabbed. They said Vedoeg. Doeg was the head of the Supreme Rabbinic Court, that he was jealous of King David, and he tried to minimize, denigrate David in the eye of King Saul, and then he was punished by dying young at the age of 34, and he was punished by his reputation. The Va'achitofel, famous story, the Gemara said in Sanhedrin 101, Achitofel was jealous, he wants to be the part of the king, and then unfortunately he died in the age of 33, and he was punished the same way with the bad name. The Gehazi was the servant of the prophet Elisha. He put his eye on the money of Naaman, which was the minister of the Aramean army, against the prophet Elisha, and he was punished by having a leprosy that take away all of his money. The Avshalom was the son of King David. He wanted to take over the kingship while his father was alive, and while he was rebellious against his father, he was stabbed, he died in a horrible death. Then Va'adoniyahu, the son of Chagit, again another son of King David, he put his eye on the woman Avishaga Shunamit, that she was one of the servant of his father. He tried to take the kingdom while his father is alive from his father, and he died as the order of King Solomon. And then the Uzziyahu, the king of Yehuda, he wanted to serve in a holy temple as a priest, and then he was punished by having leprosy in his forehead. And then the famous story of Haman, the Meiri said that he was to annihilate the Jewish people, as they said in the book of Esther, and we all know how eventually he was hanged. So they all wrap up with one statement, Shenatnu einehem b'ma she'eino ra'u lahem. All these 10 names, they have their eyes, they set their eyes upon something that not fit for them. Ma shebikshu lo nitan lahem. What they wanted wasn't given to him. But even ma shebiyadam, what is already in their hand, netalu mehem, they took it from them. So the Gemara said, the Mishnah said, Bi'arech itchila be'avera. she sinned first with the thigh. So מנענה מילי, how do you know? Before the body, אילי מה משום דכתיב בטאת השם יתירכך נופלת בבנך צבא, והכתיב וצוותא ויתנה מנפלה ירכה, which means the body first. So you have to say, אמר אביי כי ליית, when the Kohen utter this manner of curse, ליית תחילה ירך, first he expresses the curse on the thigh, והדר בטן ליית, and then he curses the stomach. ומיה כי בדקי, when the water check the body, כי אורחיו בדקי, בטן ברישה והדר ירך. So נעשית בכללה נעמי כתיב לצבות בטן ולפון ירך, ההוא דמודע לכהן דבטן ברישה והדר ירך, שלא הוציא לעזה מים המרמרים. Obviously we said several times, we want to make sure that people not misconstrue the aspiration of the miracle of the bitter water. So that's the story. There is a Ralbag on Shmuel, mind-boggling Ralbag, on the first Shmuel chapter 12 verse 6, that said that the same applies in the measure for measure. Anyway, the Mishnah speaks about Shimshon. So the same ways that measure for measure in Sotah happened, Shimshon alach achar enav, because he wanted to marry a Philistine's beautiful woman. So as we said, the Ralbag said that it was a physical desire. Not everyone agrees. Many commentators say that he was a righteous man in all of his decisions. But anyway, לפיכך נקרו פלישתים את עיניו. So therefore, the Philistines took away his eyes, make him blind. Meaning measure for measure, he used his eye inappropriately, so that was paid back. שנאמר, they said in the book of Judges, chapter 16, ויחוזו פלישתים וינקרו את עיניו. אבשלום נתגאה בשערו. Absalom, the son of King David, was proud of his hair. So this is a well-known story that he always go around with this arrogant attitude with his hair, and as a result, guess what happened? Nitla bisaro. When he chased his father and his army men to get rid of his father, he was entangled his hair with one of the branches in the high trees, and he was between Gehinom and for hours, and then he was stabbed terribly many times. So לפיכך נתלה בשרו ולפי שבעל 10 פילגשי אביו, because he cohabited with 10 concubines that belonged to his father, לפיכך ניתנו בו 10 לונביות. Therefore they stabbing 10 times with 10 different לונביות, which is the spears. שנאמר, ויסובו 10 נערים נושא כלי יואב. So it was 10 young men that just stabbed him. ולפי שגנב 3 גנבות, and because it was 3 times, some say that it was not a physical stealing, but it was in the heart. לב אביו, לב בדין ולב ישראל, the heart of his father, the heart of the בית דין and the heart of the nation. שנאמר, ויגנב אבשלום את לב אנשי ישראל in instigation against his father. לפיכך נתקעו בו 3 שבטים. Meaning then he was 3 times get this stab. שנאמר, ויקח 3 שבטים בכפו ויתקיים בלב אבשלום. יואב did this stabbing in the truth is it was the opposite order. Anyway, וכן עניין הטובה, now we go in a positive way. What is the good? Someone does a good deed, nothing go unpaid. Miriam Hintina le Moshe, the oldest sister of Moses. We all know the story in the beginning of Exodus when they want to get rid of all the baby boys by the order of Pharaoh. Miriam was waiting when she sent the basket to see what's going on. Sha'a achat, meaning an hour. Because of that decree, she wants to save her brother. So she watched over. שנאמר ותהי תצב אחותו מרחוק, but the sister was standing there to see what's happening. לפיכך נתעכבו לה ישראל 7 ימים במדבר. Therefore, 81 years later, when the Jewish people were wandering in the desert, Mazel Tov, they wandering in the desert, so good to see you. שנאמר, והעם לא נסע דאסף מרים. Meaning, measure for measure, when Miriam afflicted with leprosy, the entire nation, which was a result of Moses' leadership, waited for her for a whole week until she healed from her dermatological sickness of seclusion of leprosy as a payback, measure for her good deed, watching over her brother 81 years earlier, which again show that this notion that is a measure for good as well. Yosef זכה לקבור את אביו. Yosef merited Joseph, as Yaakov asked his son at the end of book of Genesis, to be buried in Eretz Israel in a cave of Machpelah. And ואין באחיו גדול ממנו, and he was the viceroy king, שנאמר ויעל יוסף לקבור את אביו. He make his business as a viceroy king to go personally and bury his father, ויעלו עמו גם רכב גם פרשים. So how he was reward. מי לנו גדול מיוסף, שלא נתעסק בעולם משה, that who is bigger than Joseph out of the 12 sons, that Moses himself, when they left Egypt, was occupy himself solely to collect the bond of Joseph and bring them to burial in Nablus, in Shechem. Moshe זכה בעצמות יוסף. Moses took care of the bond of Joseph, as Joseph asked not to be staying in Egypt but to be buried in Eretz Israel. ואין בישראל גדול ממנו, is nobody higher than Moses among our nation. שנאמר ויקח משה את עצמות יוסף עמו. Moses make his business personally, humbly, to take the bond of Joseph with him when they left Egypt. And they said, as a result, מי גדול ממשה, שלא נתעסק בעולם מקום, that God himself in our language buried Moses. שנאמר, they said at the end of Deuteronomy 34, ויקבור אותו בגיא, that God himself buried Moses. ולא משה בלבד, אמרו, that God occupied himself with the burial, אלא על כל הצדיקים. Again, we need to understand this, a little Kabbalistic concept, we don't have time for that, but the idea is that in our language is God himself occupy himself with burial of the righteous, שנאמר והלך, Isaiah said, הלך לפניך צדקך, כבוד השם יאספך, which means that the God himself in our language take care of you in the sense of burial. תנו רבנן, שמשון בעיניו מרד. Samson committed the sin in his eyes. And as we said earlier, his intent, as many rabbis said, was to save the nation. He married those women in order to take care of the nation's need, and he did a lot of paying back. But anyway, the text here speak about rebelliousness toward his eyes, שנאמר ויאמר שמשון אל אביו אותה קח לי כי היא ישרה בעיניי לפיכך נקראו פלישתים את עיניו, as we said, measure for measure, took care of his eyes by the Philistines, שנאמר ויחזו פלישתים וינקרו עיניו. איני, is that correct? והכתיב ואביו אמו לא ידעו כי מהשמי. So they said כי הזל מי הבתר ישרתו הזל, meaning he went the way that is proper and his eye. And as we said, it's a controversy how far and how much you go in the notion that he really did it as an act of desire or as an act of helping the nation in their situation. Anyway, Tanya, Rabbi אומר, תחילת קלקולו בעזה, לפיכך לקה בעזה. It means that the location was the beginning of the downfall was Gaza, and later was punished there. תחילת קלקולו בעזה דכתיב, וילך שמשון עזתה וירא שם אישה זונה, לפיכך לקה בעזה, והורידו אותו עזתה. The Philistines punished him to take him there in Gaza. והכתיב וירא שמשון תמנתה, it's written in different location, in תמנתה. תחילת קלקולו מיה בעזה, but the beginning of downfall was in Gaza. So then they said, ויהי אחרי כן ויהב אישה בנחל סורק ושמה דלילה, the famous story of דלילה. תניא רבי אומר, לא נקרא שמה דלילה, לא הייתה קרואה שתקרא דלילה. Which means that was one of the three women that Samson married, which is dildela et kocho, which means that she severed Samson's strength, dildela et libo, dildela et maasav. She basically create a severed in his strength, severed in his action, severed in his heart, which means she was very bad to him. דכתיב ויסר כוחו מעליו ודלדלה את ליבו, דכתיב ותרד דלילה כי הגיד לה את כל ליבו, דלדלה את מעשיו ותסתלק שכינה מיני. That basically the divine providence departed from him, דכתיב והוא לא ידע כי השם שר מעליו. So it means that she create such an energy that he lost the help of God, the divine providence in his life, in his leadership. ותרד דלילה כי הגיד לה את כל ליבו. Delilah was a wicked woman. She saw that Samson told her all in his heart. Menayada, because Samson originally by the text gave her misinformation. So how she know that now is the true? Amar Rabbi Chanina, Amar Rav, Nikarin divrei emet. That's fascinating statement. He says that the true words are recognizable, which means Hashem grant us with the inner voice, with intuition, to recognize what is a total truth and is a no truth, something that come from heart, go from heart. When I study a world religion, as you know, we have about 8 or 9 world religion. So one time, one of the students asked a question when I taught them, and he said to me in a college, very intelligent student, huge class I have at that time, and he says, we study so many religions, Confucianism, Shintoism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, Jainism, and he said, it can't be 9 truths, it has to be only one truth. So how do you know that this is the ultimate truth? So I said, it's very simple. Since you just said that there's no any possibility for more than one truth, you have to examine each source, each foundation of each faith group, to go to the roots of each faith group and examine that. And then you have to come to conclusion which faith group originated and which faith group carries the ultimate truth, because there's no two truth. אביי אמר ידעה בו באותו צדיק דלא מפיק שם שמיים לבטלה. דלילה knew Samson that he is a righteous man, that he will not utter the name of God in vain. כיוון דאמר נזיר אלוקים אני, since he commit himself to be a godly Nazirite, אמרה השתה ודאי קושטה כאמר. Now, since he commit himself to that, he is certainly telling the truth. So, והיה כי הציקה לו בדבריה כל הימים ותאלצהו. So the text said that after she tormented him with her words every day and pressed him, and he became exasperated to death. So what does that mean? Mai vata'altzehu. What does that mean that she pushed him in such a way that he needs to reveal to her the sin that he was so distressed? אמר רבי יצחק דבר רבי עמי בשאר גמר ביאה נשתמתה מתחתיו, which means that one of the suffering of man, that when they have an act of cohabitation, she just run away from him, which means that that's part of creating stress for him, that she did it on purpose. ועתה היא שמרינה ועל תשתי יין ושחר ועל תאכלי כל טמא. So now they said in the instruction of the angel, say that in regard to the son, that you should be careful not to drink wine and not to eat any impure, contaminated food. So that's the Shimshon Nezirut. Mai kol tameh. What does that mean when we use the anything contaminated? So they said, Vetu ad hashat dvarim tmeim ka'achla. The mother, she ate something that is prohibited, that is contaminated. What does that mean? So they say, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak b'rei Rabbi Ami, dvarim ha'asurim benazir. Nazir, as we explained many times, there are certain things that he is prohibited, such as water that combine with grapes, since it resonates the taste of wine. Therefore, the Torah used mishrat anavim, that not drink. And some rabbis explain in the Midrash, since wine created all kind of problems, and he has those challenges or weaknesses, or with the Philistines women, that's the idea. Vayivka Elohim et hamachtesh asher balechi. One of the miracles that God performed for Samson is God split open the hollow that was in the jawbone, and water came from it, and he drank. Huge miracle. So they said, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak dever Rabbi Ami, hu iva ledavar tameh. He wanted to marry women that worship idols. Lefichach, measure for measure, nitluya chayav bedavar tameh, that he will die of thirst if God did not created special phenomena come out of a donkey, that he was able to drink. So it's a measure for measure. So it's all go the same way. So now the whole idea of measure for measure, the Gemara continue on, and in the next daf we'll continue with that with this discussion.